Of my vast catalog of 5 videos, this is by far the hardest one I've had to make. Not because I've decided to end my quest to get my invention to the NHL, but because the story behind that decision is so mundane and abrupt and irrational. And telling that story in a way that makes any sort of sense, even to me, will be a challenge. Fabricating a more sympathetic storyline might make more sense, but I would never stoop to such lows to manipulate your opinion of me. My troubles began with a fundamental fact. The human head is an inconvenient shape, especially when attempting to design a face mask with a curved net. When a ball hits a normal, flat net, all of the ropes tense against that object. When a ball hits a convexly curved net, the vertical ropes tense as they did before. The horizontal ropes, however, hang helplessly limp. The full force of the impact then travels through the vertical ropes and causes the supporting frame to clamshell and the net to sag. In my previous update, I built a test rig to determine that vertical force and found the numbers very high. So the question then became, could I reduce that force? Flipping the cage so it curved concavely would certainly help, but I doubt that would catch on. Alternatively, I could reorient the net. Forces wouldn't magically disappear, but they would redistribute to the formerly horizontal ropes, and because of the change in geometry, the vertical component of the forces would be a lot lower, in theory. Luckily, I'd already made a test rig, so I could do a quick sanity check. I removed the rope which represented the vertical ropes of my curved cage and replaced it with one to represent an angled pattern. To add tension, I tied a versatackle knot, which I anchored with 2 alpine butterfly knots. The results from the first few tests confirmed a reduced vertical force. I continued testing. My pitching machine only shoots up to 65 miles per hour, so I hoped to gather enough data to project the forces at higher speeds. Slowly ramping up speed, I continued gathering data, until suddenly, the test went off script, and the rope broke, breaking my spirit along with it. I began to spiral. How can I have worked with these materials for so long and still suffer these stupid failures? Am I a fraud? Why can't my brain work the way I want it to? Why do I share all my progress publicly? Why don't I just pretend like nothing happened? Am I an idiot? Once I picked myself off the floor, I looked closely at the failure. The knot, my beautiful little alpine butterfly, had been brutally torn in two. This wasn't surprising. A knot can have the strength of a rope. I'd been careful to avoid knots in my prototypes as much as possible. I could just move the knot to a less vulnerable spot and carry on testing, so why didn't I? Why did this failure affect me so much? It's not like I haven't failed before. I've been humbled so many times by this project. I've become the most humble person in the history of the world, and a true connoisseur of failures. I've experienced everything from the floral undertones of small setbacks to the velvety slide of disappointment. But this failure I couldn't place. A feeling was growing in my gut that I didn't fully understand. At first I thought it was telling me that there was another lesson to be learned here, namely that, like this test, my prototype didn't have enough ropes at the point of impact. Obviously, the more ropes, the less each has to do individually. In early prototypes, I tried to accomplish this with a rigid bar. The idea was that when a puck hit a rope, the rest of the ropes would move sympathetically. In reality, the number of ropes physically touching the puck was more important. It helped me to think of an elephant on a tightrope. You can have the tightrope connected to rigid towers, or to springs, or to a series of other ropes. No matter what, the force in the rope that the elephant is standing on stays the same. It's only reduced if another rope is added directly under the elephant. So in hopes that it would get me back on track, I decided to add more ropes under my elephant. Or, in other words, make a net with smaller holes. But as I wove each connection, that unsettling gut feeling, rather than going away, grew overwhelming. I've felt something like this once before. Back in college, I ate at Subway a lot. It was the only place on campus that wasn't run by the school, and the draw of eating something that didn't taste vaguely like every other meal was irresistible. And so every few days for about 3 years, I found myself in a line far too long for such a mediocre sub. And then, one fateful day, I entered the building as I'd done so many times before. That familiar Subway smell washed over me, and in that instant, I knew that I would never eat at Subway again. And so it was with this net and with the uncage. A sudden, overwhelming feeling of finality. There's no technical reason for stopping. I still believe in the core ideas of tension over bending and using flexibility to lower the peak of impact. The desire for the end results is also still there. I would love to rub elbows with pro hockey players, bring new and interesting ideas to the sport, and make a bunch of money by shaking down children playing an already expensive game. But the day-to-day desire, the curiosity and joy that drove me this far in the first place, is gone. In the beginning, I had visions of this being something of an art project. I imagined Kevlar, 2 ways, with rigid composite Kevlar framing flexible Kevlar rope, showcasing the range of fibers. And then it was a tensegrity structure that captured my imagination. But in the end, it turned into a plain old net, and that wasn't really what I wanted to do. It felt too much like optimization and not enough like exploration. Either that, or I'm just sick of failing. Either way, it turns out the story I'd written for myself wasn't the story written for me. And that's been a little hard to come to terms with. Half of me feels I should be able to impose my vision on the world through sheer effort and determination alone, as so many brave businessmen have done before. The other half of me feels that I should be more accepting of my fate, to realize that I've done my best and the rest is out of my hands. And the third half of me feels I should be thinking less about what I should be. Thankfully, when things were feeling heaviest, I read a wonderful quote in Ursula Le Guin's story, Sur, that helped me put things in perspective. Achievement is smaller than men think. What is large is the sky, the earth, the sea, the soul. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. Whether you've read every one of my 40 updates or just given me your attention for these past few minutes. Without your support and your encouragement, I absolutely would not have made it this far. If you wanted an uncage, I'm sorry that I couldn't deliver it to you. If you have any interest in carrying this idea forward, feel free to get in touch. I'd be happy to share everything I've learned. And if you just enjoy me sharing the stories of what I'm making and what I'm learning along the way, don't worry. I'm sure I'll be back with another bad idea soon enough.